Alright, this is Weaver of Fate once again, judging a debate. This one is on request by Sir Lancelot. The topic is socialism, which is quite a broad topic. But it's pro or con, right? Of course. So let's go ahead and read the rules, because from what I'm assuming, well, they have it right here, so we'll just read it down here. 1. Both sides have a burden of proof. Here, wait, let me just make sure. Yeah, it's recording good. Both sides have a burden to prove their positions. I've noticed this kind of burden swinging in far too many debates. It is a tactic to merely win a debate, not to find truth. Don't act like you're above it. Do not act like you're above it, good sir. Come on. If you truly just wanted to find the truth, then you would either be hiring somebody to go out and find it, or you would be doing a lot of research yourself. Normally speaking, people don't do debates to quote unquote find the truth. That's a mistake I made when I first got into DDO. They definitely don't. Like, they're doing it to win. So don't have any false illusions. Sources are not everything. That's a really bad sign for your argument. Something also misunderstood is the nature of facts. Facts are not automatic guarantees that what you say is true. Facts can be wrong, misinterpreted, or misapplied, or even irrelevant to your argument. Well, that is true, fair enough. But you kind of put that in there a bit harsh, you know. Lastly, you can have a fallacious argument, which is one consisting of logical fallacies, such as contradictions, that are unable to be defended by mere facts. Basic etiquette: no character/ad hominem attacks, no topic critiques, etc. Weighing mechanisms: individual versus collective. Voters should weigh the arguments based on support for a more collectivized for socialism or individualistic against socialism type of governance in a state. Clarification on the burdens. For the pro side, for socialism, the support, build evidence on, and defend socialism. Okay? For the con side, against socialism, to support, build evidence on, and defend against socialism. That's worded a bit weirdly, but sure. We will have 5 rounds in 2 days each to post. To truth. Oh, this is going to be a long one. Definitions, if any. Socialism: political and economic theory advocating state ownership and the control of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. Oxford English Dictionary. Okay. So let me state my bias. I am moderately pro. So if you look at my political stances, it's not really listed too obviously, but I am a fascist slash national socialist slash phalangist. So I do believe in socialistic policies. I do believe that there should be some type of free market existence. But just to state the bias, I am moderately pro. I'm definitely not laissez-faire by any means. I am authoritarian, heavily and slightly left. So let's go ahead and get this going. So here's how this is going to work. So we have a few categories for arguments. Well, 4 to be exact. We have key arguments. This is when burden of proof, is in a debate. Normally it should be in a debate. Thank you very much, pussy. Sorry, that was an ad hominem. But but whatchamacallit, it seems that the person who made this debate, Khan, did not want any burden of proof, right? So this means that we're basically not going to have any key arguments, right? So this category can essentially be null and void. So instead, we're going to go based off of a point system. So solid arguments. Now, how do we define solid arguments? Solid arguments are essentially arguments that are pretty airtight. Like, they are very pertinent to the topic. They make a lot of sense. They give a lot of background, etc. They're well supported, right? Then we have moderate arguments in the next tier. I decided to add this for my last judging because there was like one point that fell into that gray area, and I just wanted to have it just in case I needed it. Moderate arguments are ones that are pertinent to the debate, but they're not necessarily that important. Maybe they come up later in the debate, it's less of a point of contention, etc. Yet, it's still heavier than arguments that are more minor. Now, minor arguments are ones that are barely relevant to the topic, barely relevant to the debates. These, are minor points of contention that if they're won or lost, don't really contribute much to the debate. For each solid argument won, the person who wins it gets 3 points. For each moderate argument won, the person who wins it gets 2 points. For each minor argument won, the person who wins it gets 1 point. So, how do we determine who gets what amount of points? Well, say that, for instance, let's have a sample. Let's say, I don't know, This is socialism, so let's go economic arguments. So let's just say they have an economic argument. Pro starts off, he's really strong, right? So I tally 1 for pro, right? Because he made the argument. Now it's up to con to refute that argument. If con can refute that argument, he gets a tally. This means if there's an equal amount of tallies on both sides, that no one has won the argument. This means that nobody gets any of the points. However, say that pro refutes con's statement, and con cannot refute the refutation. This means that regardless of who started the argument, because pro has more tallies, 2-1, pro takes the argument as a win. So that gives him 3 points. Then yada yada yada, same premise for this. And then at the end, we add up all of the points, and we then get the final total. Whoever has the most points wins the argument section of the debate. Now, conduct, pretty self-explanatory. If I see any, insults, passive-aggressive jabs, something that is not necessarily in the spirit of the debates, and it's mainly by, it's mainly like malicious, I will tally it. The one with the most tallies loses conduct. Spelling and grammar, same premise. As I read the debate, if there are any obvious spelling or grammar mistakes, I'll put a tally. Whoever has the most tallies loses the spelling and grammar argument. Well, spelling and grammar points. And sources. If I see any sources that are very weak, or if I see any sources that contradict your case, or sources that contradict each other, you will get a tally. The one with the most tallies loses sources. If any of these are even, it's a tie. If this is even, it's a tie. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, that's how we're going to determine the winner of this debate. Again, this is null and void because no burden of proof. So, let's get started. By the way, each round we will be reviewing who's currently in the lead, who's currently losing, and you'll get my commentary as we read. So we're starting with Logic A, and he starts with, "My fellow debaters and thinkers, who said this? I am a socialist, and a very different kind of socialist from your rich friend Reventlow. It was a rising German politician named Adolf Hitler. Hail. Our understanding of socialism's dark historical past has often been clouded by wartime propaganda and modern political narratives. I want to put socialism on trial for the evils it has caused, ideologically and in practice in the real world. Now, of course, I can't judge by any of my previous knowledge, but I will go ahead and say that I would have a lot to say just by this alone. But, let's go ahead and see what goes on in this debate. Contention 1. Socialism is anti-social. The use of the word social in socialism is disingenuous because it aims to sneak in the preconceived notion that the people in a socialist state are united and have a say in its construction and implementation. But socialism, despite the euphemism in its name, well, that's still grammatically correct, is far from social. A. The definition of socialism by the Oxford English Dictionary is the political and economic theory advocating state ownership and control the means of production, distribution, and exchange. The means of production. The means that are used to produce goods and services, including the social relations between workers, technology, and other resources used. Encyclopedia. Distribution and exchange. The distribution and exchange of these goods and services is a necessary factor in an economy also. Control over this is a key factor in socialist policy. Impact. Socialism is complete control of the economy. Because socialism requires government ownership of every integral part of an economy, it necessarily decides its well-being. B. The two types of state. Most socialists do not argue the first definition in principle, but rather they disagree on the meaning of the word state. The Oxford English Dictionary defines the state as a political community under one government. The state, in turn, is two particular things. It is firstly the community, often called the people or citizens of society, and second, it contains the governing class of the community, the government. Both are part of the state, but importantly, only one is directly involved with centralized directives for the whole of the state, Socialists generally claim that in socialism, the people, part of the state, are the ones making decisions for this state. This, however, Socialists generally claim that in socialism, should be a comma there, but I'm not going to count it because it's an understandable mistake. I won't count mistakes that are understandable. I'm not a grammar Nazi. Hail Hitler. The people, part of the state, are the ones making decisions for the state. This, however, is impossible. That might be a run-on, but again, it could be a common mistake. I'm not going to count it. To understand why, you have to know the fallacy of democracy. We must ask ourselves what the people means when speaking of state action. Democratic governance is an illusion because it assumes that everyone will agree on any one thing. We know, quite to the contrary, that people disagree on pretty much everything. Even given majority rule democracy, there will need to be a class of enforcers capable of ensuring that 49% uphold the majority's will. This executive enforcing class, with its great power, can overturn the majority's mandates by siding with the minority and also choose to enforce their own laws. Okay? This is why we see special interest groups in the U.S. government get special treatment and laws made in their favor. The enforcement body is always corrupted for its own benefit, even without wishing it. We have witnessed the destruction of democracy by its own hand. Okay, so I'm going to need to break this up into an argument. So this, I'm going to take this as, we can term this the social/moral argument. Khan's made that argument. He gets a tally. All right. The fallacy of democracy. Okay, we've already been there. Impacts. The power of the state is the governing body. There is no such thing as democratic rule, and so there must be some head of state, the government, with the deciding and enforcing power over the rest of the state. Hold on. Political and economic theory advocating state ownership and control of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. He's doing a bit of wordplay with socialism because normally socialism and authoritarianism are two very different things. But just by the notion of his definition, I can't critique him on it. Like, technically he's staying within the realm of the definition. But it's a very unrealistic interpretation of what socialism actually is. Because I can't use outside information to judge a debate, but just in case you'd want to know, that you have socialists that do believe in socialistic policies, such as welfare, that believe in almost complete anarchy, right? They just believe that, like, a small, like, centralized authority made up of the commune in and of itself should be able to redistribute the goods to others. So it's quite strange how, so far, socialism has been equated with authoritarianism, and this is coming from somebody who's an authoritarian in and of himself, right? But let's keep reading. So the power of the state, there is no such thing as democratic rule, so there must be some head of state, the government with the deciding and enforcing power over the rest of the state. Socialism is government ownership of the economy. It follows that the governing body of the state handles and mandates the means of production and the products produced. The people are not the government. And it goes without saying that the people, disconnected from the ruling class by means of enforcing power, military/police, can only accept its decisions. Contention 2. Socialism defining ethics is compulsion. Okay, so it seems like you're splitting up two arguments. You're splitting up one that's more of like the people, we'll just call it the authoritarian argument. That's probably going to be better for you. Authoritarian argument. And then let's call this next one, because I'm pretty sure you're going to get into the moral argument here, the moral argument, and we'll edit it just in case you don't. Contention 2. Socialism's defining ethics is compulsion. Because socialism pushes government control of all facets of... Is this correctly spelled? Yes, it is. Let me just make sure. No, it's correct. Facets of society, including private property, the means to work, provide a living, and trade, it necessarily relies on force to achieve its aims. There is no doubt that a government cannot function without some use of force, but socialism uniquely harnesses this power to answer every problem of the state. The free market state, in contrast, respects the individual and principally limits government interference in a person's life. Impacts. The abolition of man. The philosopher Socrates exclaimed, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Socrates wished us to understand human nature and our place within it so that we may live effective and fulfilled lives. Man's essential nature and key driving force is his free will, his ability to choose his own path. Socialism takes this from him because it calls for government control over the workings of society, taking property and essential tools away from the control of private citizens, effectively living their lives for them. Therefore, the essential principle of free will in human nature is abolished by socialism and meant to... Okay, so I'm right by calling this a moral argument, because I thought that he was going to get further into authoritarianism here, but now he's getting into free will and, whether the needs of the individual trump the collective. So, okay, this is good for the moral argument. The horrors of socialism. There are many branches and variations of socialism that share the central theme of dominating state government, including the likes of fascism, communism, and National Socialism. For the sake of brevity, I will not go down the rabbit hole of explaining the history of each. Rather, I will cover a few examples. Well, just by your own examples, like, you're heavily... And again, I'm not going to judge you on this, but I am going to go ahead and enlighten you to a few things that are just going to be between, the video, and are not going to be to judge the debates. Fascism, communism, and National Socialism are widely different ideologies, right? They share some similarities in their economic doctrine, and under your definition of socialism that you're trying to push in the debate, they would be somewhat similar, namely that they are all authoritarian. However, as I stated before, in socialistic economies, you can have ones that aren't authoritarian, and on top of that, all of these forces, like fascism and National Socialism, were extremely opposed to communism because fascism and National Socialism don't define themselves as inherently socialistic. They define themselves as a reaction to communism, true socialism. They use National Socialism because socialism, for instance, was getting a lot of popularity in Germany. Nationalism is basically what founded Germany. It was Germany's own unique take on socialism and on capitalism. Because what National Socialism and fascism always advocated for themselves was that they were the blend of the two systems. This is why one of the biggest mistakes the Germans did in World War II was basically have too many private companies making bids for production, so they couldn't standardize their production line, for instance, with tanks, right? Fascism also had a small private sector, but the private sector is heavily regulated. Contrast with communism, which is absolute state control. National Socialism and fascism are also both very socially conservative. Communism is extremely socially liberal. Very different ideologies. To have them all together grouping on what should essentially be authoritarianism is a mistake. We need to go ahead and state, like, is any degree of socialism technically socialism? Like, if I am, for instance, center-left, or if I am far-left, am I considered the same thing under this debate? And that's one thing that I don't like, is the topic's very broad, but you guys can use that to your advantage. Like, you've used this to your advantage on constructing your argument like this. Whatchamacallit, but at what point do we start noting that, okay, if somebody's center-right, like, are they against socialism? Or is it, if you're like moderate right or far right, right? And sorry, that must have ear-raped you. My mic fell. And at what point do we distinguish, right? Is it like cultural, or is it purely economic, or do we take authoritarianism in there? So this is going to be a very confusing debate to judge. I recommend that in the future, if Khan does challenge people to other debates, he makes the topic more clear. And I recommend that Pro does not take a debate like this in the future. I think that it's a very big mistake accepting a topic this vague unless you already have a plan going into it. But we'll go ahead and see how Pro addresses his things. Because so far, I would definitely say that Khan, with how he set up the debate, is definitely in the lead. Example 1, Crimes of Hitler and National Socialism. Reichstag fire, decree, and elimination of individual rights. The first of many motions by the National Socialists to get rid of individual rights. They did this by eliminating constitutional protections, German constitutions. Sections 114, 150, 117, 118, 123, 124, and 153 of the Constitution of the German Reich were suspended until further notice. Thus, restrictions on personal liberty, on the right of free expression of opinion, including freedom of the press, on the right of assembly and the right of association, in violation of the private postal, telegraphic, and telephonic communications, and warrants for house searches, order of confiscations, as well as restrictions on property, are also permissible beyond the legal limit otherwise prescribed. Reich President Hindenburg, the Reich Chancellor. Fuck, I did not pronounce that really well. I got choked up on my throat because my throat's a bit sore. I'm sorry, guys. Chancellor Hitler, the Reich Minister of the Interior, Frick, the Reich Minister of Justice, Gürtner. Okay. It was also known as the Reichstag Fire Decree, which permitted the regime to arrest and incarcerate political opponents without specific charge, dissolve political organizations, and to suppress publications. It also gave the central government the authority to overrule state and local laws and overthrow state and local governments. The decree was a key step in the establishment of the Nazi dictatorship. Germany became a police state in which citizens enjoyed no guaranteed basic rights, and the SS, the elite guard of the Nazi state, wielded increasing authority through its control over the people. I would actually be interested in debating. Well, I don't think I'd be interested in debating right now unless we would do a live debate. But I'd be, if Khan's interested in doing like a live debate, or something akin to that, I might be interested in doing a debate on Nazi Germany because I think he's doing the evil Hitler narrative. But man, that's going to be interesting if I'm able to go into that. But again, I can't judge off of other things in the debate. I'm just going through my thought process because this is something that I researched a lot, so I know a lot about. Under National Socialism, crippling economy, German socialists, in their bid to revitalize the German... So I'm going to put this under a separate point on the moral argument. We're going to call this the... Here, let me make sure that I have it. Yep. Historical argument. And we'll put this down here so they're very easy to see. And then we'll do that. The regime's policy of borrowing against future prosperity seemed to be literally paying off. Nazi propaganda trumpeted what it called a German financial miracle, yet with additional expenditures exceeding additional revenues by almost 300%. Public debt increased in the first 2 years of the Nazi regime by 10.3 billion Reichsmarks. Annual spending soon reached 36.8 billion Reichsmarks by 1939, with state revenues bringing in less than half of that amount. To make it worse, interest payments on the debts robbed 3.3 billion Reichsmarks from the already dried-out coffers. Such a financial situation is untenable, and something had to be done to alleviate the debts. Indeed, the situation was so dire that in January 1939, directors of the Reichsbank wrote to Hitler, "The unlimited expansion of state expenditures flouts every attempt to draw up an orderly budget. It has brought state financiers, despite the drastic tightening of tax legislation, to the brink of collapse, and threatens now to destabilize both the national bank and currency. No financial recipes or systems, no matter how ingenious or well thought out, and no institutions or set of fiscal mechanisms can suffice to rein in the disastrous consequences of unbridled deficit spending on the currency. No government bank is capable of propping up the currency against the inflationary policies of the state." So he's basically touching on MIFO bills. Now, of course, I can't judge based off of my own knowledge, but if Pro is historically savvy, he will note how Hitler essentially got the majority of the MIFO bills canceled and kept the German industry. But I don't think that many people look into World War II the way that I do, to the extent. So he's probably not going to. So far, this is an extremely solid case by Khan. Hitler's solution to the debt crisis: Holocaust and war. Okay, yeah. No. Of course he brings up the Holocaust. Hitler bridged what he and... By the way, Holocaust is a lie. Hitler bridged what he and his leadership knew to be the precarious financial situation with military adventures that had terrible consequences for millions of people. Dispossession, deportation, and mass murder became a major sources of state income. 1, page 37 and 39. The Nazis believed that Aryan Germans were racially superior. They wanted to create a racially pure state. These views helped justify the exploitation of Jews and conquered people to support the failing German economy. Percentage of German wartime revenue derived from external sources, that is, revenues from occupied countries, forced labor, and persecuted Jews, is about 70%. The results of this economic exploitation were the deaths of 200,000 undesirables, 6 million Jews, 7 million Soviet citizens, 1.8 million non-Jewish Poles, and countless others beaten and starved in other territories. Was Hitler a socialist? Many will say that Hitler is not a socialist, citing earlier versions of his political rhetoric. But it is important to judge Hitler by his actions as the head of the National Socialist Party in Germany rather than by his past views. As by their fruits you will know them. Hitler was not a socialist because of what he said, even having called himself socialist many times, but because he oversaw government control of the German economy in true socialist fashion. The uncomfortable truth for the socialist is that if Germany was not socialist, Hitler wouldn't be anyone of note. No historian would have wasted ink writing his name. Instead, we would have blamed the evil private German citizens for having killed the Jews and the economy. But of course, such a silly notion is dispelled by the well-documented reality of Hitler's National Socialist government and its hand in the overall downfall of the German economy and people. This dude really does not know history. That is such a meme. In the end, it is clear that socialism's blatant disrespect of the individual is beyond repair, as evidenced by the abolition of free will and crimes committed against the people it governs. To truth. Alright? Well, again, I cannot judge by stuff that I already know outside of the debate, so far, we have a comfortable lead by Khan. So now we're going to get to Pro's argument. Let's go ahead and see what he gets into. So, Pro, we have Sir Lancelot. Here's the preamble. The topic, socialism, makes it unclear exactly what it is we are debating. If you knew that, why'd you accept it? Hopefully you have a plan. For the sake of the discussion, I propose the following resolution. Socialism is a better form of... No. You can't do that. You can't do that. We're sticking to the normal resolution. If you didn't like it, you should have suggested alterations. So, unfortunately, what you see is what you get. And let me drink some water, because my throat's getting a bit dry, and it's a bit sore. I had to work a double shift. Alright. A lot better. I have my gallon of water that I need to drink by the end of the day, so I'm definitely going to try to get that knocked out. For the sake of discussion, I propose the following resolution. Socialism is a better form of government than political individualism. Well, if we look at how we define the winning terms, for the pro side to support or build evidence on to defend socialism against socialism, and voters should weigh arguments based on a more collectivized for socialism or individualistic against socialism type of governance in the state. So, socialism is a better form of governance than political individualism is, already what he wants us to vote off of. So I guess that's fair, but it's already his standard, so I don't know why you're amending it. I guess to make it clearer to voters. This is the position I shall be in support of. My case then shall be based on the following arguments. Education and capitalism, environmental protection, free healthcare, individualism destroys societies, the effects of individualism on crime. Burden of proof. While not labeled, this is an on-balance debate. He did label it. According to the rules, the burden of proof is therefore shared. Khan wins if he can demonstrate that individualism is better, and I should win if I prove that socialism is better. Well, correct, but he did post who has the burden of proof. Definitions. Socialism. Political and economic theory of social organization with advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. You accepted the debate knowing fair well that this was the definition right here. You cannot change that. If you wanted to change that, well then that's that, right? You could have. But he specifically clarified state ownership, not community ownership. Therefore, any arguments that you make that does not involve the state being the community will be considered null and void in my analysis. Capitalism. An economic, political system in which the country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. I will allow this because once again, that was not put in the original description, so I will allow definitions that are not put there. Individualism. Political and social philosophy that emphasizes individual freedom. Fair enough. Collectivism. The theory and practice of ownership of the land and means of production by the people or the state. Alright, so we have these definitions now all written down. Unless Khan wishes to contest any of these will stay. And these will help us judge. So to review, individualism, political and social philosophy that emphasizes individual freedom, and collectivism, the theory and practice of the ownership of land and the means of production by the people or the state. And there we go. The triple threat. These are the three roadblocks currently inhibiting the progress of society, which is perpetuated by capitalism. Job creation, poverty elimination, inequality reduction. Education and capitalism. Capitalism is causing a divide and inequality in regards to those who succeed versus those who fail. 1. In education, in the U.S., this was reinforced by the Coleman Report, Coleman et al. 1966, which collected and analyzed nationwide data, concluding that student achievement was primarily determined by family background, not school resources. Well, I'd have to contest you there in that IQ is like 50% heritable. But again, I can't bring stuff into the debate, so, we'll go with that. Whoa, your argument's short. Major shortcomings of private schools is in their inability to take personal responsibility for the rate that students that cannot pass. When monetary gain and profit are prioritized over the quality of education, you get the perfect recipe for a disaster. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 6 million people are unemployed as of last November. The major purpose of education is to teach people basic skills, and skills are necessary in order to get a job. The problem of the education system is privatization. With the critique of public schools being too full and having an inadequate amount of learning resources and incompetent teachers, a lot of concerned parents have turned to what they think has filled a gap in the education market: private schools. People who stand to gain from privatized education are greedy businessmen who want to impose their own view, not necessarily what is good for the student. Okay? So we will call this the education arguments. And let me go ahead and put it right here. Well, yeah, so we're going to do that. All right. People who stand, not necessarily was good for the student. Environmental protection. At the moment, we're witnessing the destruction caused by capitalism firsthand. Carbon emissions are peaking and doing catastrophic damage to the environment because of automobile manufacturers. The sea levels are rising and the heat in the water is growing too intensive that it is killing off sea life. Spotting different ideas on how to address these issues, society is unable to reach a solution under the current system. If we can create a system in which the state controls the means of production, we can abolish these toxic businesses and replace them with environmentally friendly companies. We'd be able to monitor these companies closely. It's ironic considering that the arguments that I would use for a socialistic system are completely different, because I think that we're coming from different social political spectrums. So I will time this the environmental argument. Okay. So we already went through there. Good. Free healthcare. Your bank account shouldn't determine if your life is saved or not. And yet that's exactly the message that the government is telling us when we are injured. In an individualist economy, a human life is only as valuable as its income. Withholding healthcare is genocide, plain and simple. Now, if we implement socialism, it is certainly a guarantee that everyone receives it. Okay, so I'll term this the healthcare argument. Individualism destroys societies. How can we expect this country to function if every major system in power is mutually destructive? Why should the public have to suffer because they don't have the means by which to move up? The very philosophy that hard work yields results is the same ideology of the people keeping everyone else at the bottom. Now, considering that his morality argument was more so based off of the fact of human nature, I can go ahead and say that those go against one another, but I wouldn't say that you effectively refuted his position in any means, so I can't give you any points. The effects of individualism on crime. Capitalism perpetuates crimes in two ways. Greedy robber barons like Andrew Carnegie are able to profit while the poor are enslaved to the burden of doing hard manual labor to keep his business successful. Privatized education restricts the ability to obtain the high-demand skills necessary to get a great-paying job, and thus turn to crime to make a living. Well, again, we're coming at socialism from very different angles, but that's definitely not an argument I would make, because I would personally have refutations to all those arguments, but I will have to go ahead and give them to you. Crime argument. All of the arguments so far have been very relevant to the topic. All of these are very important. Nobody can dispute that the environment, healthcare, crime, education, the historical record of that type of ideology, morality, and the authoritarian factor are very important, because governments are decided off of this. Worldviews are decided off of this. How we distinguish which worldview is correct is distinguished off of this. How we learn about it is distinguished from this. How we live is distinguished from this. If we live is distinguished from this. And if somebody kills us is distinguished from this. So far so good. We don't have any conduct, we don't have any negative conduct points. We don't have any negative spelling or grammar points. So good to them. Let me just do this in advance so that we can separate who's who. So far so good. Alright. And they have 3 sources. He has a lot more. But so far, there's no difference in quality. Capitalism and education, the climate and capital. That's extremely selective quotation you have there, Sir Lancelot, I see. Extremely, how do I put this? Charitable to your case. So, if I compare that with this, he mainly has, historical sources. So far, if I'd have to choose the sources, I would give him. Merry Christmas to all. I will address Pro's case next round. Currently busy with family. God bless you. You have a Merry Christmas, Logic. Sir Lancelot. Khan says that socialism is antisocial? When the means of productions are owned by the individual, companies are free to get away with doing very sketchy things. Not to turn this into a topic about veganism, but slaughterhouses commit heinous acts of cruelty. Oh no, to animals, and this kind of abuse is inhumane. The police can't interfere because the companies exploit legal loopholes to cover up these horrors. If the means of productions were owned by the state, we could monitor these companies closely. Individualism has given oil companies the ability to expose of their waste products into the ocean, thereby contaminating the environment and all in the name of greed and indifference. Families go to these beaches. How can they trust the government to protect us when they're incapable of protecting these children from these sociopaths? So, I don't really think that you go against him in any means. You didn't contest him on authoritarianism. You didn't contest him on really the moral argument to a high degree. Your arguments were very short. If I compare, for instance, his argument to your argument, it seems like his is quite a decent size longer. In fact, let's character checker. Let's check. So here's yours. You have 739 words. Let's just round up to 4,700. He has 11,361. So yeah, it's not like you had a character limit. Because if we look at the character limit is 30,000. So far, you just decided not to address his points. Perhaps you're being polite and not wanting to take an extra round and just wanted to get that because you got annoyed by that point, which, I consider fine. I'm not going to take any points off of you for that. But so far, here's the score. We have 3 tallies, 3 arguments that are going for Khan, 4 for Pro, just by sheer volume. Pro had the advantage in the fact that he went second. No worthwhile refutations have arisen, so we'll see how Khan takes this in the next round. 40 years ago, a man from the Soviet Union walks into a local shop. He asks the clerks, "Do you have any meat?" The clerk says, "No. Here we don't have any fish. The shop that doesn't have any meat is across the street." That's funny. Example 2. Crimes of the Soviet Union. Alright, you are doubling down on this historical point, huh? In strikingly similar fashion, the National Socialism was the rise of the Soviet Union and its grip on Russian life. Soviet controls of the meat of production. The Soviet Union, similar to Germany... No! You're making a big mistake that many people that actually don't look into these types of things make. You're equating the two governments that could be nowhere near equivocable. There we go. To one another, right? That's a mistake. But, hey, again, no outside knowledge in the debate. The Soviet Union, similar to Germany, advocated for the state control of the means of production. As Marxists, the Bolsheviks believed that the private ownership of the means of production provided the basis of political power. By nationalizing it, they undermined their opposition. They further acted in the conviction that a centralized and planned economy was inherently more effective than a capitalist one, and would in no time turn Soviet Russia into the most productive country in the world. The free market in Soviet Russia was soon abolished. In the first year of the new regime, all but the smallest industrial enterprises were nationalized. Agricultural land, the main source of national wealth, was for the time being left at the disposal of peasant communes, with the understanding that sooner or later it would be collectivized. Private ownership of urban real estate was abolished, as was inheritance. The state, that is, in effect, the Bolshevik Party, because the sole owner of the country's productive and income-yielding assets, became the sole owner. Okay, so you better bring up Holodomor. Like, you better. Don't just bring up the gulags, or else we know that you're actually not well versed in history. Consequences of Soviet socialism. Destruction of the economy. Money was effectively destroyed by the unrestrained printing of banknotes, which led, as intended, to extraordinary inflation. By 1923, prices in Soviet Russia, compared to 1913, had increased 100 million times. Ordinary citizens, along with the rich, lost their life savings. Slavery of the state. Barter and the issuance by government agencies of free goods replaced normal commercial operations. Private trade, whether wholesale or retail, was forbidden. All adult citizens were required to work whenever ordered. The independence of trade unions was abolished, and the right to strike against the nationalite enterprises outlawed. Genocide and death. As part of the Soviet program, enemies of the state were starved and rounded up and killed in the millions. Presented the overall democide and the totals of those killed in terror, deportations, camps, and transits. Democidal famine for the 8 periods of Soviet history. 1970 to 1987, lines, on the table, from 28,326,000,000. Oh, wait, no. My bad. 28,326,000 to 126,891,000 people were killed during these years. A prudent estimate is 61,911,000 dead. Of these, 54,767,000 were Soviet citizens. Ugly pattern of state control. Whether it be National Socialism or the Soviet Union, a disturbing pattern of large evils follows state control of the economy. Rebuttals. Very short rebuttals. Shit. I don't tend to restrict the topic too much in my debates, but since socialism is a type of governance, we are simply debating whether or not this type of governance is good as per the description. No. Your own description contradicts you. Bad. Voters should weigh the arguments based on support for more collectivized for socialism or individualistic against type of governments in a state. We are not arguing the exclusive morality of it. That is a mistake. I will not judge solely off of that. Education and capitalism, environmental protection, etc. Greedy individuals. To these I have 2 responses. Greed is not unique to free societies. All systems have issues. No system, whether more free or more controlled, will not produce problems. Proclaims that individuals are at fault, but fails to prove that socialism, which also consists of individuals, will get rid of them. People are greedy. The question is, what system maximizes the power to wield their greed? Socialism gives the rich unlimited power. For the sake of the argument, I will assume that all wealthy individuals are evil and selfish. Pro offers government coercion and socialism as a solution. It seems more like you're arguing against authoritarianism. This argument makes the fatal assumption that the rich will not seek influence and benefits from the state. It, however, contradicts our assumption of the rich's evil intent. Far from keeping the rich in check and solving Pro's problems, socialism offered the rich the greatest weapon against the poor yet, the state. The wealthy of society will continue Pro's harms, but this time a special interest in government utilizing the resources of the whole state. The greatest evil requires the greatest power. Murder and crime has been committed in all types of societies. People are flawed and evil. When it comes to the individual in a free society, one such murder cannot continue in his sin. Oh wait, let me reread that. People are flawed and evil. But when it comes to an individual in free society, one such murder cannot continue in his sin, for he is held accountable by society as fellow man. But for the socialist state, what is to hold it accountable when the society must obey it? This is why we see the greatest evils committed by governments. They are the enforcers of society, accountable only to themselves. Hitler and Stalin, the most evil men responsible for the most death and destruction in human history, would not have gone far without the power of the socialist German and Russian governments. This is why socialism is wrong. It gives evil people the greatest power to destroy. To truth. Well, you didn't really knock any of his arguments, so I mean you're already winning in the moral, historical, and authoritarian arguments, like by far. Like you're crushing it. Like you're not winning in these. You have to refute your opponent's arguments, whether or not you Just call it greedy capitalists. Yeah, he didn't. I agree. Kant didn't acknowledge the criticisms I raise about education, the environment, and healthcare. Rebuttals. Socialism gives the rich unlimited power. The evils of the wealthy. Okay, this is going to be a bit in depth. This is technically strawmanning my previous point. Not all wealthy people are inherently evil, but there are a lot of evil people who are wealthy. The state isn't required for the specific kind of person to commit most atrocious crimes. Wealth and evil are the worst combination. Money doesn't make people evil. Money is an amplifier. So these individuals who abuse this privilege give other wealthy people a bad time. Taxing them will likewise reduce the amount of damage that they can do. All systems have problems. Greed is not unique to free societies. All systems have issues. No system, whether more free or controlled, will not produce problems. Oh, okay. He quotes. Bad formatting. The answer is capitalism, plain and simple. While it is true that each system has its own inherent flaws, this response is not a rebuttal, it's a deflection. To raise concerns about socialism but then use a dismissal that every system has its own problems is a logical inconsistency. If I too use this point, we would be at an impasse. Every system has its own problems. That doesn't really address the fact that a lot of these significant problems could be solved with socialism. How? How? Just how? How? Just let me know how. Like, you let me know how here. Don't let me know how here. Maybe you meant for them to, like, bounce off of one another? Power and corruption. Responding to this by extending my argument for the first round. Okay. Socialism has changed and evolved over time. Past behavior doesn't necessarily indicate future performance, and socialism has learned from its mistakes. Socialism as a sentient being. A lot of blame and responsibility is thrown on socialism, giving it so much significance that it characterizes socialism as an evil deity rather than a system of thought. Hitler and Stalin would have gained the support of their fellow man and become powerful anyway. Socialism is not the common denominator. I mean, I will just say the only thing that you contest is the moral argument. That's it. But you still have such a lead that it doesn't even really matter. So we have a tie here. So we have 2 arguments going to con, 4 arguments going to pro. So as of right now, pro is winning. We don't have anything on the conduct. We don't have anything on spelling and grammar. We don't have anything on the sources. Rebuttals. Pro claim con does not acknowledge the criticism about education. But it seems he misses my 2-group response. Greed is not unique to free societies, and socialism gives the rich unlimited power. That doesn't address that. I'm sorry. Right? Whatchamacallit? Like, if the whole point that he's saying about socialism, that socialism gives these things, then you say, well, they're greedy anyway. That's not a rebuttal. Like, you gotta be like, okay, well, just to give you some advice, you have to be like, okay, well, socialism does give free education, but the education is of low quality. And, you know, for instance, officers and oligarchs are still able to go to these rich schools, so it doesn't solve the problem. That's a rebuttal, right? That's not a rebuttal, what you just wrote. This is technically strawmanning. As I pointed out from my response, for the sake of argument, I will assume that all wealthy individuals are evil and selfish. The point of this is to Iron Man pro's position so that I can respond to it at its strongest. The state isn't required? Okay. It seems pro has missed my point here. I never said individuals couldn't commit large crimes, but instead I point out that greedy individuals continue to operate in the government, which gives them the most wealth and power to commit the crime. I agree that evil individuals amplify their evils with money, but taxing them only gives a smaller group of individuals, the government, more money and power than any individual ever could have. Socialism is the ultimate greed. In response to my argument that greed is not unique to free societies, Pro states that I am deflecting, but it seems he missed the point. Pro has not shown how socialism solves the problem of greedy individuals, which he states is the problem behind his harms. Instead, I've challenged him that socialism is the highest form of greedy individuals, giving a small group of them the power of the whole state. This is why, once more, the largest evils come from greedy individuals, the government, i.e. Hitler and Stalin. This is yet to be responded by Pro. And then we have the last of round 4, because he knocked back on the moral argument. He didn't knock back on anything else. So once again, Pro is still winning at this point. If, by this time, like if I read all this, and Pro has not made his, Khan has not flipped any of his arguments to his side, I can safely call the debate in favor of Pro. Hitler and Stalin frequently use examples to illustrate why socialism is bad. However, socialism since then has changed significantly and branched out over time. Well, at least you're not using the one thing that Hitler was actually right wing argument, which is stupid. The socialism of today is therefore not the socialism used by Hitler and Stalin. I would really, really like to see Logic K get into that. German people like Otto Strasser have ensured that socialism learned from its mistakes. My opponent correctly points out that every system has its flaws, and that's true. Capitalism itself has a dark history and continues to kill people today. While Khan acknowledges my arguments from the first round, they're still uncontested, and so will remain for now. Extent. Yes, he has. That might be the Achilles heel to Khan in this debate. I think he got too cocky. Democracy and socialism have nothing in common but only one word: equality. But notice the difference. While democracy seeks equality and liberty, socialism seeks equality and restraint and servitude. Alexis de Tocqueville. Voting issue. The individual. The individual is the highest value. As I've shown, the individual is a building block in society and is crucial to its makeup, which harms the individual and harms the rest of society. Liberty protects the individuals. It follows that liberty allows the individual to exist. It should be respected above any other value in society. Socialism destroys individual liberty. During this debate, I have pointed out numerous times socialism, by controlling the economy, severely limits the liberty of the individual, thus failing to uphold the highest value. Voting issue 2. Crimes of socialism. Abolition of man. At this debate, I have maintained that socialism attacks human nature, namely the strict ability for people to make and control their own environment. Socialism's primary ethic is compulsion, control the individual. The point has made it through this debate unrefuted, but remains a massive scar in the face of socialism: slavery, debt, and death. In this debate, I gave two clear examples of socialism in practice with the socialist states of National Socialist Germany, Hail Hitler, and Soviet Russia. Both gained control of the economy, as is the definition of socialism, and restricted the individual rights in the process. Again, it just seems like you have a big problem with authoritarianism. This destruction of the individual resulted in tens of millions of deaths, completely destroyed economies, which far surpass the evils of individuals in any free society to date. Voting issue 3. Socialism is the ultimate greed. Greed in both free and socialist regimes. It seems that pro and con agree that greedy individuals exist in socialism and free society. So my opponent correctly points out that every system has flaws, and it's true. Okay. People have choices. Wait a second. Let me go to this point, because didn't he get my point? Okay, yeah, he didn't do anything else. Okay. People have choices, and some choose to be greedy and cause evil, whether in socialism or in any other system. The greatest evils require the greatest power. What then do we do about these greedy people? Perhaps, as Pro has argued, government should intercede in order to prevent the harms done by them. But as I've pointed out, government is also made up of the same greedy individuals. Unless we presuppose utopia, everyone being perfect and righteous, government is also prone to greedy individuality. The result is increased power not in the hands of greedy individuals, and so socialism worsens the harms it sets out to solve. No harm brought up by Perot can match the tens of millions starved in Soviet Russia, nor the millions of Jews, Catholics, and others forced into and killed in concentration camps to fund National Socialism. Wait, you do real... I hate this. Because people that I'm not going to get into it. It's not the topic of the debate. Rebuttals. Hitler and Stalin are frequently used as examples to illustrate how socialism is bad. However, socialism since then has changed significantly, branched over time. Okay, yeah. In order to be successful in this argument, Pro needs to provide modern examples of socialism. Yes, he does. That are better. And no mixed systems. U.S., China, Europe. That's no. We don't set that boundary, right? If they're further left, right, then technically they can be considered more socialist, right? Because again, your own definition is this. The voters should weigh the arguments based on support for more collectivized, for socialism, or individualistic. So yes, if they are more collectivistic, then technically they are socialistic according to your own voting parameters. Otherwise, it is just speculation. I can name several socialist countries that many of us would still consider destroyed or destitute. Even if Pro is correct that socialism is indeed changed, it still misses its necessary attack on the individual. No amount of goodwill or reform could justify such an ideology ordered towards the destruction of free will. Furthermore, the evils done by these socialist regimes will always be remembered as the most evil in history. No free society has even come close, which is why we talk so much about Hitler, Stalin, and Mao. We must always remember and consider our past mistakes, especially the largest ones. While Pro acknowledges my arguments for the first round will remain contested for now, so extend. As I pointed out in my last post, I responded to Pro's harms with 2 points titled Greed is not unique to free societies, and socialism gives the rich unlimited power in round 3. The crux of that response was to acknowledge the evils done by the individuals in freer societies, but also point back at how socialism makes it worse. Props special thanks to Sir Lancelot for the debate. Rational Madman better watch his back. Wink. Happy New Year to all to y'all, and God bless. Honestly, I think that you both should, I'll go ahead and say that to the end. Conclusion. Successfully maintain my position of the consequences of the free market on society in general, from the effects of privatized education on the economy to the damage to the environment from oil companies. I demonstrated a fundamental need for socialism. I thank Khan for the debate. Both of you guys should be ashamed of yourselves for debating in this fashion. Khan completely shits the bed on his chance to win. Because if he would have contested these arguments, he was dominating in any argument he had. In the authoritarian argument, the moral argument was only able to be refuted once, and he took it right back. Here, wait. I have it right here. I actually put it on the wrong one. Historical argument, Khan put out of the water. Like, Sir Lancelot didn't even have the historical background to even contest. Instead, he could just go, yeah, well, it's bad too, with a 30,000 character limit, without providing any modern examples, right? But just his own arrogance that, no, my moral argument is just so good that I don't need to refute his claims, because I've already shown that individualism better than collectivism, killed him. It made it to where he couldn't win, because if we tally up these points, it doesn't take a mathematician to find 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, so 9 points for Khan, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, and that's 12 for Pro. So that means that Pro won this debate, right? So let's go ahead and tally this up. So that means that this is 3, this is 3, this is 3, because this is uncontested. This is 3, this is 3, this is 3, this is 3. So if we go ahead and put it like this in the debate, and my mic drops again, sorry about the ear rape, that means that Pro wins arguments. So conduct, tie. Spelling and grammar, no errors, tie. Sources, no obvious issues with the sources, tie. So just by that alone, just because, again, of the arrogance, Khan shut the bed. And Pro, Sir Lancelot, I expect better from you. I don't know whether you knew that he was messing up and that he wasn't attacking your argument, so you didn't feel the need to attack him on the other points. But had I not judged this debate so objectively, and I just would have judged it based off of, my own personal feelings, like just how much I felt he was dominating you in the arguments that he was making, I would have voted for Khan 100%. Because you were passive. You were so passive. It was like a girl that's like, no, I don't want to do it. Stop it. And meanwhile, she's spreading her legs. Like, hey, come on, dude. Like, it was so bad, right? It was so passive. It's not even fucking funny. Like, you didn't refute really almost any of his points well. You put minimal effort. Perhaps like you were busy with the holidays, in which case, understandable. Completely understandable. Perhaps you wanted to enjoy your vacation, but then don't take the debate. And another thing, don't try to change the resolution. If you don't like the resolution or the voting criteria, don't accept the debate, or just suggest changes. This was a very poor showing. Very, very poor showing from both of you. Logic is arrogance, despite his, quite frankly, superior debating ability in this debate, lost. And Sir Lancelot, because of his laziness and just arrogance in his own arguments, but at least with Sir Lancelot's case, he was right, was able to win the debate, right? But poor showing from both of you guys, poor showing. And, I hope that you guys improve, and I hope that you get better in the next debates, because, again, just poor showing. All right, so that's my final verdict. Arguments, Pro wins. Everything else is a tie. Have a good one.